plaintiff ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Is the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moody. All right, anything before we bring in the jury?
No, Your Honor.
Bring in the jury. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that y'all had a good lunch. Thank you for being back promptly at 2. I really appreciate that. One of the things about court and cold court is we always try not to waste any of your time. So I do appreciate y'all doing the same, being here on time. What I want to do to begin with is just give you a little bit of an introduction as to what your job in this is and what my job is. I briefly mentioned it earlier that my duty as a judge is not to be the finder of fact, but to actually charge you on what the law is. I have also the duty of determining what type of evidence would be admissible in this case. So you may at some point hear objections or anything, or something like that. You may hear me rule on those objections. That's part of my job. But your job as jurors is to determine what the facts of this case are. Now, as I previously mentioned, the facts of this case, in this case, is going to be a little different in that liability is not an issue. You were to determine what the damages are in this case, but you'll base that off of the testimony and the facts that you see in this case. Now, ultimately, if I make any kind of ruling or I do anything during this trial that indicate to you that I have some opinion on what the facts are, please ask you to disregard that. That's not my duty. The law doesn't allow me to have an opinion on the facts in this case. That's what you're here for. Ultimately, you will hear testimony from the witness stand, and you'll also be able to probably see some exhibits and take a look for yourself and determine what you to be believable and what may not be believable. Ultimately, you will be the judge of the credibility of witnesses. You'll take a look at these witnesses and determine if somebody may have something to gain, or if somebody was perhaps not impartial in what they're stating, or if they are. But ultimately, that's up to you, and you will be the finders of fact in this case. In just a moment, we're going to hear opening arguments by the plaintiff, and then the defense will have an opportunity to give their opening statement as well. I will tell you that opening statements, and also closing statements, and any other statements from the attorney in this case are not facts. They are simply the opinions they wish to state and what they believe that the evidence and facts will show to you. So I just simply state that they are not testifying. They are simply stating what they intend to show throughout the trial of this case. I expect for this to be a very short case. I expect that it will take too terribly long, but I ask for you to pay close attention. I believe that the plaintiff and the defendant both in this case deserve that. That being said, I will also tell you that ultimately when we take breaks and things like that, I am specifically ordering you not to discuss anything about this case until you've heard everything, and until I specifically instruct you that you may begin your jury deliberations. The reason that we do that is because you don't know everything about this case yet, and you won't until the entire case is finished. And after the case is finished, we'll have what we call closing arguments, and I will charge you exactly on what the law of South Carolina is concerning these matters. But again, I thank you for your willingness to serve. I appreciate it. I know that both the plaintiff and the defense do as well. So we will begin with opening statements. Counsel.
Good afternoon. My name is Roy Willie, and along with Matt Burgess and our law firm, we have had the pleasure and honor of representing Dawn Conley and her family over the course of the last several years. This is a case about a mother's love. It is a case about Dawn's love for her daughter. But it's also a case about a community and a state and a nation that have watched in jaw-dropping agony and in hopeful admiration over the course of the last 16 years as Dawn has fought for justice for her daughter. First to find her, then to figure out what happened, and ultimately to hold everybody who played a role accountable in every single way possible. That's what this case is about. And this week, you're going to see that story, I hope, over the course of just a day. The good news is that over the course of the last 16 years, although there have been mountains of evidence collected and video captured, testimony taken, witnesses identified, we have worked extremely hard to distill that down into what we hope will be a trial of mere hours. And that trial, because it is mere hours instead of weeks, is of course no less important. But Dawn trusts this community, and she trusts you as representatives of this community to understand that, and to understand that the evidence presented, because it is short in time, is no less important and no less heartfelt to her. There are multiple types of justice in our system, and justice comes in many dimensions. In this case, it's obviously been a long time coming. It's been a long road to get to this point, and it's our job to present Dawn's case, and at the end of the case, your job to deliver that long overdue justice for what she has been through. And you all know that in our system, there's criminal justice and there is civil justice. Criminal justice is beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt what happened. That part, as to Mr. Moody, has been resolved. But there's also a civil justice component. And the civil justice component isn't about freedom. That's what criminal justice is about. But it's about the finances. It's a statement in this community about whether or not somebody is allowed to commit a crime and then keep everything that they have or not. It's as simple as that. And in this particular case, you know, a lot of times lawyers get up here and they say, well, this case is about closure. This isn't a case about closure. There's no closure in a case like this. At best, it's one more step towards resolution. It's one more step towards holding every single person accountable in every single way for what happened to Dawn. And it was her commitment at the beginning of this to do that. So that's what we're going to do. Now, the practical effect of this is that during the course of all of this, Mr. Moody, Raymond Moody, inherited some property. And so this judgment is the first step in being able to seize that property, since he's spending life in prison, and to give those proceeds to Dawn. Okay, that's the practical effect of what we're doing here. But the value of that property would not even cover her travel expenses for traveling back and forth to Myrtle Beach, to Georgetown, to Charleston, and everywhere in between that she has traveled to tell this story, to find her daughter. And then, after finding where her daughter was, the remains of doing the hard work to hold people accountable. it's important for another reason. It's important because it's our community's opportunity to speak as one voice. That's what verdict means in the Latin. It means to speak the truth. And it's our community's opportunity to say to all the predators out there, frankly, because as you can see, the news media is here. People will know what happened in this courtroom. And this will say to those predators, whether you are of limited means or a billionaire, and we all know predators span the spectrum of socioeconomic bounds. They span the spectrum of status in society. It'll say to them that if you come into this community and you cause this level of pain to a mother, you will be held fully accountable. You will be held fully accountable criminally, and you will be held fully accountable civilly. So while you may not care about your own freedom, perhaps you care about your family's financial freedom if you have a family. And just know that in this community, we will hold you accountable for the full measure of damages. That's what this case is about. So, there were a lot of ways that we could proceed. And Dawn and I have spent countless hours together talking about this process and what's required. This is a required part of the process to go through and get a judgment in order to hold somebody civilly accountable. And I want to give you a little roadmap so you know what to expect in this case. As part of this, I'm going to actually show you a video here in just a few minutes, which is put together by 2020. It's a news timeline, basically, of everything that happened in the case. And we're doing that in lieu of bringing in all of those witnesses over the course of weeks and giving you that testimony live. At the end of that, I'm going to have Mike Conley from the FBI, who was the FBI agent that, one of the FBI agents that worked very closely with Dawn in finally solving this case and figuring out what happened. He's going to come up and he's going to corroborate basically what you saw in the video as to Mr. Moody, okay? And then he's going to fill in some of the gaps, because there are a few gaps that are important for you to know as far as what Dawn did to make all of that happen. Because here's the truth. Without Dawn's persistence, this is still a cold case. Brittanee is still buried in the woods in Georgetown County. And nobody knows what happens without her persistence. So after that, we're going to hear from Kim Kite, who is a friend of Dawn, who got to know Dawn throughout this process, who spends much of her time in missing persons cases, to give you a little bit of background on what she has observed as far as Dawn's damage and reaction to this and how Dawn has been involved. And then finally, you're going to hear from Dawn, okay? And just 3 witnesses. And we hope to be able to keep it moving. And Dawn is going to speak to you in a way that will be difficult because it's not prepared remarks like they have been before. It's going to be question and answer. But Dawn's tough, and I know that we'll get through it. And then we'll rest our case. And when we rest our case, it'll be Raymond Moody's opportunity, if he would like to present any testimony or evidence to you at that time. So that's how it'll go. At the end, there'll be closing arguments, which will be a lot like this. And then it'll be your opportunity to tell the world what this community thinks about what Mr. Moody did to this family. And that is how we will conclude. And I hope that we haven't badly miscalculated. And by the end of that, you will have enough information to understand what full justice in this case looks like. That is, at the end of the day, that is my job, that is Matt's job, that is our undertaking. And I will tell you, it is a heavy undertaking. Not something you want to get wrong. So that's how we're going to proceed. We're going to play that now. I'm going to sit down for it. gone to that episode. It's just over an hour. We are going to fast forward through the commercials, so we're going to do it like on the streaming version, and then we'll be on to the witness testimony. And if at any time your feed cuts off, just let us know, okay?
Find her. Where is she? A mystery for years. Now, for the first time, exclusive interviews with the investigators who solved it.
We said, let's look at this thing scientifically and not focus on any specific individual.
You're just trying to put those little pieces together to build some type of a profile of her pattern of behavior.
At what point did you get a sense she went from walking to being in a car?
Look, my daughter did not run away, I'm telling you.
Her drive to find her daughter kept everybody in the nation interested in what was going on with Brittanee's case.
You said you didn't be responsible for any rest of this time. Responsible for anybody didn't care.
The final ping from Brittanee's phone is in an area that is swampy. It's not an area where a 17-year-old girl would be traveling.
And then the FBI drops a bombshell.
This is a story about a beautiful young woman who goes on spring break to Myrtle Beach, and her life intersects with a monster.
She was perfectly fine in a spot that she should have been safe.
And then she just vanishes. There's nothing.
Brittanee Drexel is walking the strip when all of a sudden all communication stops. Period. Cold. No one will ever hear from her again.
Brittanee was vibrant.
Mama got one all the reindeer.
Her smile was so beautiful, it just lit up the room. When I had Brittanee, I was 20. That is kind of still young to have a child, but it brought a lot of joy into my life.
When Brittanee came into our lives, it was a big surprise, a welcome surprise, but we were very young.
But when Brittanee was about 2 years old, her parents, Dawn and John, decided to go their separate ways.
Things just didn't work out. We were kids ourselves and lost touch.
They had separated and her mom had married Chad Drexel. They live up in Rochester. Rochester's upstate New York.
Brittanee had a little sister, Marissa, and she had a little brother, Cam.
That one's Brittanee. That's Marissa and Camden.
I was the middle child and siblings.
I was 12 years apart from Brittanee and very close with her, even though I was little.
Oh my God, she adored him. Look at how happy he was.
She was just always my protector. She was always there to hold us, to comfort us, to make sure we're always safe anywhere we went.
We became best friends from day one. She was a very, very kind and just beautiful, beautiful person inside and out.
I would describe Brittanee as a little spitfire. She was little but mighty. She had this like warm personality that everyone gravitated towards.
She was very energetic, very feisty, especially at soccer, especially powerful on the field, even though she was short.
Brittanee played a right winger. She scored 26 goals in 1 year. She was just a great soccer player.
Turns out it was a trait she might have inherited from her biological dad, John, who came back into her life when Brittanee was about 16 years old.
I was shocked. The first time I seen her play, it was like, wow, that's my girl playing soccer right there.
She was very excited to have a biological father in her life.
The first time that I've seen her, it was like looking at myself. She was so beautiful. and funny. I was just in awe. Once I found her again, life kind of came back in me. We just had a lot of time to catch up with.
In 2009, Brittanee is 17 years old, and she reconnected with her biological father. But her stepdad, who raised her, is now separating from her mother.
During that time, it was rough for us kids as well.
Brittanee did go a little hog wild there, partying and hanging out with a new group of friends. They were all older than her.
She was just going through a lot, you know, us separating, getting a divorce, and also dealing with, you know, normal teenage things with her boyfriend. This photo is of Brittanee and John, I believe when they first started dating.
John Greco was Brittanee's boyfriend, and they had dated for a year or two. It was kind of up and down, break up, make up, you know, but she loved him.
She wanted to get away as my parents were separating.
She had her spring break coming up, and you know, it's cold in Rochester, New York. Brittanee was very excited to go to Myrtle Beach. She's like, I want to go to the beach. I want to, you know, have fun in the sun.
It was that new group of friends, that older crowd, who invited Brittanee to come down to Myrtle Beach.
She asked to go down there, and I said, Brittanee, you're not going to Myrtle Beach. I said, there's no parental supervision, and I said, something is going to happen to you.
She then proceeded to ask my mom, okay, can I go to a friend's house who lives in Rochester, New York, and stay a couple days there while spring break is going on? And my mom said yes.
I said, that's fine as long as I talk to a parent. So she put someone on, and I told Brittanee to keep in contact with me.
Her mother told her, yes, that was okay, just because she knew she was going to be in Rochester. Myrtle Beach is a part of the Grand Strand area. It's miles and miles of beautiful beaches. A lot of people come here to enjoy spending time out in the ocean and on the beach with their families.
You have beautiful luxury places with pools, and then you have it all the way down to the honky-tonk motels that line other parts of the Strip.
Late at night in certain areas, it can get bad, it can get dangerous.
That morning, I went with my mom to Grease Ridge Mall. We were buying soccer attire for the soccer season coming up for the summer. And I told my mom, can we call Brittanee because I don't know what size she is for soccer cleats. So she called her.
I said, well, what are you doing later? And she said, oh, we're just at the beach because that's what they call Lake Ontario. And I said, I will call you when I get home, you know, just to check in.
And then I was like, wait. Before she got off the phone, I was like, I forgot to say I love you. So she gave me the phone and I said that I love you. And I thank God that I asked my mom to grab the phone back because that was the last time I talked to her.
And then Brittanee says, okay, Mom, I'll see you tomorrow. I love you. Those were her last words to me.
Unbeknownst to her mother, Brittanee had gone to Myrtle Beach for spring break after her mom specifically said she couldn't go. So for the past 3 days, she's not at a friend's house nearby, but she's 800 miles away, unsupervised.
On April 25th, 2009, I received a phone call from Brittanee's boyfriend, John, asking me if I had spoken to Brittanee that night, and he's like, you know, I can't get a hold of her. We've been in constant communication. We were texting, everything was fine, and then her text just stopped. Her boyfriend became very concerned, and when she didn't answer him back, he said, I'm gonna go tell your mother, you know, that you're in Myrtle Beach. And that's in fact what he did.
I heard my mom's phone ring. My mom was downstairs in the living room, and I grabbed the phone, and it's John Greco, and he sounded really frantic. He goes, I need you to give your mom the phone immediately. So I go downstairs and give her the phone, and as I'm walking up the stairs, she goes, she's what? She's where?
John told me that Brittanee was in Myrtle Beach and they couldn't find her. My heart just dropped. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, you can't find her. You know, where is she?
been several hours since anyone has heard from Brittanee Drexel. After sneaking down to Myrtle Beach for spring break behind her mother's back, no one can reach her. Friends and family immediately know something's wrong. They frantically wonder, where could she be?
I still remember like it was yesterday. It's like my mom was like, it's fine, you know, they're gonna find her. We were so young and you didn't think of those bad things happening. Just something didn't feel right.
That next morning, Dawn and the family mobilized and head to Myrtle Beach to find Brittanee.
When we arrived in Myrtle Beach, it was kind of like boots on the ground. And we just started walking up and down the boulevard.
We're trying to see where her last steps were, where was she last, who she speak to. Just trying to collect as much information as possible.
We were searching for her everywhere. We were searching in alleys, we were searching in trailer parks, we were searching in dumpsters, looking for her phone, for her purse, for her.
I mean, we were out from sunup to sundown looking for her, trying to talk to people and see if anybody had seen her.
There have been no reported sightings of 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel, who went missing here in Myrtle Beach.
Family members say anything's possible, and they're trying to stay positive.
Dawn and the police pieced together Brittanee's last days before she went missing.
I was lieutenant of the violent crime section and the crime scene unit with the Myrtle Beach Police Department. And we did send the crime scene unit to her hotel to review what she left behind, if there was anything suspicious or that might give us some clue as to what happened. We found that she took very little.
There were many of us that were working on Brittanee's case. For all of us, we knew something wasn't right, and we started looking for any clues as to where she might have gone or who she was with.
The fantasies of coming down to Myrtle Beach with the older crowd and friends, all of that wasn't panning out the way she thought it would.
She went down with two couples. It was just kind of like she was a fifth wheel. When she got down there, she felt isolated, and that's why she reached out to other people that she knew from Rochester to go and hang out with them.
We had learned that Brittanee had gone to the Blue Water Resort to see some friends.
The night Brittanee went missing, she walked down this busy strip to meet friends here at the Blue Water Resort. But she didn't stay long. She quickly left to return a pair of shorts she borrowed.
While she was there meeting those friends, one of the girls that she had come down to Myrtle Beach with texted her and said, "Hey, where are my black shorts?"
It was apparently a little bit of an argument, so Brittanee at that point thought that she would walk them back.
And so Brittanee left the Blue Water Resort and was heading back to the Bar Harbor Motel to return the shorts to her friend.
Authorities get their first big break when they pull video from the Blue Water Resort. Brittanee is seen on tape leaving the hotel.
We knew it was her because of the way that she walks and because of the way that she turned her head in the video. We knew that that was absolutely Brittanee that was walking out.
I was happy to at least see that she was on the camera, but leaving was obviously the mystery. Which way did she go? Did she take a left? Did she go right? Did she cross the street?
Britt was very independent, of course, but you're in a city that you're not familiar with. It is a party town, and to see her leaving the hotel by herself, why was she alone?
Heading back down the same path she's taken several times from what we understand, she just vanishes. There's nothing.
My daughter just didn't disappear off the face of the earth. You know, she's got to be somewhere.
Missing persons flyers dot poles and posts up and down the main strip.
The area where Brittanee ventured from, this motels nonstop. Motel, motel, motel. Kids cruising the boulevard, people trying to get to where they're going. A lot of motels have cameras, but they're focused on the desk clerks and the guests. We only found one camera that was facing the road.
When Brittanee was walking toward the Blue Water Resort, her image was caught on a street camera. She was walking southbound on Ocean Boulevard.
And of course, she was walking with her head down, looking at her phone, texting the entire time as she was walking.
Authorities know that Brittanee Drexel walked past the camera on this corner on her way to the Blue Water Resort. She was also seen walking in and out of the Blue Water Resort, but she never came back past this camera, leading authorities to believe that between the time she left the Blue Water Resort and this place, she was gone.
It's very possible that she trusted the wrong person, but Brittanee wasn't one to just go with somebody completely random.
Her cell phone was incredibly important from the moment they realized that Brittanee was missing.
We know from Brittanee's pattern of life that she was glued to that thing just like any other teenage girl, and it's safe to say that where that phone went, she was also going. As the family's trying to contact her on her cell phone, those calls are being sent to her phone from Towers.
The police tracked Brittanee's phone by looking at cell phone records. They tracked the cell pings created by incoming messages.
Once we received Brittanee's cell phone information, we were able to realize that she was taken or left Myrtle Beach very quickly after leaving the Blue Water Resort.
The initial ping was the south end of Myrtle Beach. A short time later, she pinged about 15 miles south. She was moving fast, so we knew she was in a vehicle.
But who was Brittanee with, and where was she headed?
The last ping was off a tower near the North Santee River, which is south of Georgetown.
It was 50 miles south, nowhere near Myrtle Beach.
The final ping from Brittanee's phone is in an area that is swampy. It's not an area where a 17-year-old girl would be traveling.
This is when everyone involved in this investigation realized that they had a major problem on their hands.
There was absolutely no reason she would have known of a place like that or had a reason to go to a place like that.
So how had Brittanee ended up there? Authorities tracked Brittanee's cell phone here to the Pole Yard boat landing on the North Santee River. It's a rural, swampy, hard-to-reach area, 46 miles from Myrtle Beach. Not exactly the kind of place people would come to willingly in the middle of the night.
I think at that point, that's when they start realizing that something had happened to Brittanee.
Pole Yard Landing is a very remote area at the southern limit of Georgetown County.
It's a very isolated area, and it's a very brutal area.
This is an area that is covered in swamps and infested with snakes,
Alligators, wild boar, and then you can add the heat.
If she's here, it's not by her choice.
That expands the scope of your search. It points in a direction far afield from Myrtle Beach.
Santee River became a focal point for the police. We brought in divers, we brought in every possible way to search that area to see if we could find what had taken place with Brittanee.
Searchers began moving through this area in Charleston County, south of Myrtle Beach.
They put everything in, but they were coming up with nothing.
I knew she was somewhere out there, but, you know, just thinking, oh my God, you know, are we ever gonna find her?
I don't think we were accepting that she was gone.
Hundreds of tips came in, false sightings were run down, but anxious weeks of searching became months of agony for family members and law enforcement as Brittanee was nowhere to be found.
We're gonna keep looking for Brittanee. I mean, we do have hope that she, you know, she's still out there. The 1-year anniversary was the most difficult. We did a march for her. Was holding, you know, a Help Find Brittanee sign with her little brother, little sister, and one of her other friends.
Walking down the main street in those shirts and advocating for someone to speak up and give us answers was heart-wrenching.
Authorities continue to track down every lead, no matter how insignificant. At one point, a sheriff's deputy combing through the sex offender registry comes across the name Raymond Moody.
Raymond Moody was one of my sex offenders here in Georgetown County.
It was interesting that there was a sex offender in such a close proximate location to where her cell phone was last pinged to. So obviously you want to take a deeper dive into him.
Raymond Moody was sort of an urban legend in Georgetown. He was, in some ways, the boogeyman living amongst us. Ray left Georgetown at a very early age. He joined the Navy. He was stationed in California. That was when all of his problems started. He was convicted of a series of 7 sexual assaults in California and was given a 40-year sentence.
It was while he was in prison that he would meet Ernie Merchant.
My name is Ernie Merchant. I am a former romantic partner of Raymond Moody's. Ray Moody was my protector, my cell husband, and really my best friend in prison.
Ernie was in prison for various charges related to a drug bust, and his sentence was much less severe than Raymond Moody's.
I was not aware of Ray's sex offender status until the very end of my stay, right before I left prison. He told me over and over and over again that he was no longer that person. When I left that prison, I had an opportunity to walk away and not look back. And I didn't. I made an enormous decision to go live in a small southern town with a registered sex offender. I had been hairdressing for a very, very long time. I knew how to survive in the free world. He took care of me in prison. I would take care of him in the free world.
Moody is released in 2004 after serving only half of his 40-year sentence. The law in California at the time did not allow for a lengthier prison stay based on those charges.
Raymond Moody comes back to Georgetown, and most of the folks that remember Raymond Moody also know why he's been gone for 21 years. The concern that a registered sex offender is moving back into their very small community is real.
He said, this is part of it. This is part of my punishment. It's my job to prove that I can be trusted again. Living together, and we had established a nice, quiet life together. I thought he was happy. I thought he was content.
Things are going well. And then his parole ends in 2007.
When he was essentially, for the first time in 25 years, a free man, he started to change. I would say, what's wrong? What's going on? Things feel different. And he would tell me that it's just my imagination. I did not imagine that he was having an affair, particularly with a woman. Her name was Angel. I had done her hair a couple of times. She sat in my chair, smiled in my face, and of course she was, all that time, was sleeping with him.
By April of 2009, Ernie and Moody had broken up. On April 25th, Brittanee Drexel goes missing. Ernie says 2 days later, he gets a visitor.
One morning, I was woken very early. I realized there was someone in the house. I shouted from my bedroom, "Who's there?" Ray said, "It's just me." I was still half asleep, but I looked at him and I saw that his face had claw marks all over it. His neck, cheeks, his head were just clawed. And I said, "What in the hell happened to you?" "Oh," he said, "it was a wild weekend." He said that things had gotten out of control. And I said, "Well, good luck with that."
You think you can be responsible for Brittanee Drexel? Just nothing. You're responsible for anybody different here.
Guys like Raymond Moody are extremely dangerous. This guy is as bad as they come.
He just snatched me from behind and put me in the car. It happened just like that. Like in the blink of an eye.
us wanted to know what happened to Brittanee. All of us wanted to know and hold anyone accountable that might have harmed her.
As soon as Brittanee was missing, Raymond Moody was on everybody's radar. The word of what he had done in California permeated the area. They immediately focused on, well, I bet Ray had something to do with it.
Those 7 sexual assaults that Ray had been convicted of in California included crimes against teens and children. One of them was Carrie Harding.
I was 8 years old in 1983. You know, back in the 80s, you played outside a lot. I didn't have any reason to be afraid. I was walking to the school to meet a friend, and he just snatched me from behind and put me in the car. It happened just like that, like in the blink of an eye.
Raymond Moody sexually assaults Carrie, and the way Carrie describes it to police later is that it went on for a very long time.
Monsters like Raymond Moody should not be allowed to walk the streets.
But he did walk the streets.
Although Raymond Moody was on the registered sex offender list, and so he was in our sights, we had nothing to link him to the Brittanee Drexel case.
After cheating on Ernie with Angel, who was training to be a first responder, the 2 men have broken up, and Ray is living nearby on his own in a motel. So Moody winds up here in this place.
Yeah, the Sunset Lodge.
What is this place?
This is a local, low-rent, no-tell, kind of flop house joint. A lot of people with just nowhere else to turn.
Definitely a place where somebody could hide. Mm-hmm. So you saw the cell phone ping in this area. You had previously identified Moody from being on the sex registry, and you put 2 and 2 together and said, maybe he's got something to do with it.
It was definitely the medium worth looking at.
Authorities reach out to Raymond Moody's acquaintances, including Ernie Merchant, to learn more about Moody. They learn about a conversation Ernie said he had with Angel around the time of Brittanee's disappearance.
He says Angel called Ray's cell phone one night, but Ernie picked up the phone.
According to Ernie, she sounded drunk or otherwise impaired during the phone call.
And the things Ernie says Angel told him make the police want to talk to her. And so they bring her in for an interview.
Understand, now, you guys Raymond Moody, right? Yeah. We want to talk to you about all this stuff. One thing in particular is this Brittanee Drexel.
Police ask Angel about that alleged late-night phone call with Ernie.
You called her. And that's pretty wild stuff you're saying.
I just locked it out. Really? No. Because straight, I don't know what I said. I don't remember during that drinking. I'll feel safe if I can. They shut me in.
Angel says she had been mixing her pain medication with alcohol, and she doesn't remember that alleged phone call. But she says that Moody has talked about Brittanee.
So if I tell you that you made a comment, Raymond told you something about being responsible for that disappearance of that young girl.
But I remember saying it, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't remember saying, have you ever said her name? Yes. Yeah.
Okay, what did he say?
Well, he said, we talked one time when I prayed for you that he didn't want me to end up like that girl.
You think you can be responsible for Brittanee Drexel?
I think you're responsible for anybody who didn't hear.
To law enforcement, it seems that Angel is afraid of Moody.
Do you think he could do anything to you?
I have no doubt he would if he was man enough to stop this. I was in here talking to you this moment. Yeah, I might be dead tomorrow.
Angel tells police Moody has shared violent, terrifying thoughts with her.
Oh, he always has these fantasies about snatching girls off the street and raping them and then taking them somewhere and dumping them. He has these fantasies all the time. I mean, it's always not normal. It's just weird stuff.
What do you think he's done?
What do I think he's done?
Honest.
I think he's probably done something, but to do it where, I mean, I wouldn't know.
She never implicated Ray as having any involvement in Brittanee Drexel's disappearance.
if you knew you'd done something. You can tell me or are you feel afraid?
No, if I was positive without even coming down, but you've done it, I'll say it.
After hearing Angel's concerns about Moody and her fear of him, authorities are even more interested in him as a suspect, but they still need concrete evidence to link him to the disappearance of Brittanee Drexel.
Georgetown County was able to get a search warrant for the Sunset Lodge. They were looking for any clues of Brittanee having been there in the room that Raymond Moody had rented.
Select crime scene technicians searched an apartment at the Sunset south of Georgetown today. Raymond Moody lived in that room around the time Drexel disappeared.
So they take the room apart. They want to see if there's anything that would connect Ray Moody to the disappearance of Brittanee Drexel. And they take the wallpapers off the wall. They take the mattresses off the bed and split them open.
They did the search, and I remember we were all, waiting for answers.
And what did you find?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Complete dead end.
Dead end.
Ray Moody was a dead end, but the case was about to pivot in a whole direction.
What we've come to discover through the course of the investigation now is
You absolutely don't want to envision that that's how Brittanee's last moments were.
We always held out hope, that she was somewhere out there.
Hope was a very strong word, especially with our family when it came up to my sister's case.
When the world says give up hope, hope whispers try one more time. And that's the phrase I've always thought of.
But hope is running thin. No leads have panned out. The investigation into convicted local sex offender Raymond Moody has turned out to be a dead end, and 7 years have now passed.
This happened in 2009. We still had every year people asking the question, what could have happened to her?
But then, in 2016, the FBI holds a press conference here in McClellanville. You see, this is near where Brittanee's cell phone last pinged, and just minutes away from where authorities conducted an exhaustive search for her.
And the FBI drops a bombshell. They come forward to say they're ready to announce that Brittanee Drexel is dead.
what we've come to discover through the course of this investigation now is that Brittanee Drexel did leave the Myrtle Beach area. We believe she traveled to this area around McClellanville, and we believe she was killed after that.
They were sure that Drexel was deceased. They were sure where she was deceased at.
After 7 long years of waiting and praying for the return of my daughter, we know she isn't coming home alive. Brittanee's life was stolen from her in a brutal and senseless fashion.
The first question was, how do they know that she is dead? What happened to her was still being held from us.
The FBI has some evidence pointing towards Brittanee's death, but what they don't have is who is responsible for this. So they have to be very careful about what information they release to the public.
I've been authorized by the director of the FBI to offer a $25,000 reward leading to the arrest and the conviction of those responsible for killing Brittanee Drexel.
It was in some ways unprecedented how strong they came out without actually charging anyone. They needed us to still help them find out who did it.
We need your help so we can find Brittanee's remains and bring her home to lay her to rest.
It was a horrible feeling that they're now officially saying that she's no longer alive. And then to have released the details that they did, it was tragic.
Law enforcement proceeded to tell me that my daughter was gang raped, beaten, and then they shot her. And then they fed her to the alligators. I couldn't even talk. I was so upset.
I couldn't even talk.
Newly released federal court documents reveal what FBI agents think happened to Brittanee Drexel.
2 months later, the public finally learns of the evidence authorities claim points to Brittanee's death and how they allege she died.
An agent says an inmate told investigators Drexel was kidnapped, raped, shot, and killed, and her body was dumped in a swamp near McClellanville.
An individual by the name of Taquan Brown, who was an inmate serving a 25-year sentence, came forward and indicated that he was present and saw Brittanee Drexel in McClellanville at a stash house.
In court documents, this stash house is described as a hangout place where there's allegedly some drug use.
The statement from Taquan Brown was that he saw Brittanee, I guess, being assaulted by somebody. She resisted in some form and was shot and killed.
You absolutely don't want to envision that that's how Brittanee's last moments were. Being shot and then being dumped in a gator pit. To think that that's what happened to, you know, someone that you're so close with, someone that you loved so much. It was an awful, awful feeling.
Once that was in my head, I just broke down. At that point, I don't understand how they could do that. I don't get it.
For anybody, knowing her or not knowing her, like, to hear that a human went through that was just like, oh my goodness.
The informant who comes forward, Taquan Brown, tells the FBI he knows who was involved in the abduction of Brittanee Drexel.
There were some allegations against or implicating an individual from McClellanville, Timothy Deshaun Taylor. McClellanville is obviously very close to where Drexel's phone was last pinging to. It's definitely something to be followed up on.
The information being provided by Brown was corroborated by another individual that was providing information.
Taylor was on law enforcement's radar for a long time at this point because he had already been convicted of taking part in an armed robbery.
Taylor had been involved in a McDonald's robbery that resulted in state charges. When the information came to light about his alleged involvement in Brittanee Drexel's case, he was recharged in federal court. You don't often see that, but it was viewed by many in law enforcement and on the outside as an opportunity to put pressure on Timothy Taylor to provide information. Now, Taylor at all times denied any involvement in Brittanee's case. In fact, he went on television.
I didn't pick her up. I never saw her besides seeing her on TV and the internet through a computer screen. It did not happen.
Did you kidnap Brittanee Drexel?
No, I did not.
Have you ever been to the Blue Water Hotel where she was last seen?
No, sir.
He was unwavering. And I said to myself, this guy's lying, man. He's a real good liar.
Taylor, the stuff looked exciting to begin with, but the information that we received from the informant never panned out.
And it's not enough to charge Timothy Taylor with Brittanee's disappearance.
The FBI obviously had enough information that they felt this had truly happened to Brittanee. That isn't what happened to her.
I said, I'm done with the BS, I'm done with the lies. I want my daughter found.
The new FBI team steps in.
Who can we look at and say, evidence puts them here and here?
The team's meticulous approach unearths a shocking and familiar name.
I'm never going to believe who it is.
Okay, Mom, I'll see you tomorrow. I love you. Those were her last words to me.
We were so young and you didn't think of those bad things happening.
Imagine yourself, what if that was my kid? You don't want to stop until you find them.
When she steps out of the car here, who steps out with her? People want answers, and we do too, but it's like some of those things are going to be hard to find.
The dad and they were looking for Ray. That is an undertaking. No.
Who can we look at and say, evidence puts them here and here, point A and point B?
find my sister from day one.
Why did I have to wait 13 years for this to be solved?
She went from being desperate to determined. There's nothing like a mother who's determined. There's no stopping them.
It's been almost a decade since Brittanee Drexel vanished while on spring break in Myrtle Beach.
I did call the FBI today. They said they still have no updates for us.
All-American girl, very pretty, 17, nothing but a bright future ahead of her. Goes down to Myrtle Beach to have fun with friends, and every parent's worst nightmare, she disappears.
We still don't know where she is or what happened to her.
You've got a young girl in a safe place, caught on camera, and then minutes later, just to disappear. The suddenness is stunning.
No arrests have been made and no one has been charged.
Throughout all these years, I never gave up trying to look for Brittanee. This was a really important birthday. I mean, her 21st birthday. This is when they had the press conference and telling us that she was deceased. A lot of times it felt like I was never going to find her. But I knew that I had to keep her name and face out there.
In the years that Brittanee has been missing, the main persons of interest named by authorities have all turned out to be dead ends. Timothy Deshaun Taylor, named by a jailhouse informant in 2016, and Ray Moody, a convicted sex offender, investigated in 2011. But now, a new FBI team is brought in.
As far as our involvement for this team that we currently have, started when Dawn Drexel came to our office and asked us if we would become more involved in assisting in this investigation. She's very proactive in seeking answers, and she doesn't accept inactivity. Inactivity would probably be the best way to say it.
I went in to a meeting with them. I said, I'm done with the BS. I'm done with the lies. I said, I want my daughter found.
Between the three of us up here, we're into the double digits on daughters, all of us. And it's something that when you hear the story and you see what happened, you just imagine to yourself, what if that was my kid? You don't want to stop until you find them.
It was most important to us to find Brittanee. And that changes your investigative strategy, because you're not just looking to find the answers to the case, you're trying to find her where she is physically located.
We all reviewed the entirety of the evidence, making sure we were looking at least the most complete picture that was possible.
We said, let's look at this thing scientifically and not focus on any specific individual. Let's see who is at Myrtle Beach between 8:30 and a little bit after 9, the day that Brittanee went missing, and who was at the landing shortly after 10 p.m.
Who can we look at and say, evidence puts them here and here, point A and point B?
Remember, authorities had pieced together the general vicinity of points A and B years before.
Law enforcement, way before we got involved, had collected cell phone information based on Brittanee's cell phone and knew where she was at certain points based on communications going in and out of that cell phone.
All these data points were developed by people who care about Brittanee, and inadvertently, I don't think they realized it at the time, but they were creating evidence, critical pieces to the investigation.
Your point A was all of Myrtle Beach,
more or less.
And then your point B is somewhere, wait, how many miles away is the Santee River?
It takes about an hour and 20 minutes to get there by car.
It's a big area.
How do you start narrowing it down?
So we talk about Brittanee getting seen on the 11th Avenue South camera, which was right behind me, walking south across this hotel area right here. And what we were able to determine was approximately how fast she is moving. We came out here, we walked it with stopwatches, we checked it against maps.
You're just trying to put those little pieces together to build some type of a profile of her pattern of behavior.
The fact that Brittanee's text with her boyfriend ended so abruptly that night provided a critical clue for the FBI.
That tells you that whatever was the norm has now changed.
Investigators had always suspected that Brittanee's somehow got into a vehicle after she left the Blue Water Resort.
At approximately 8:45 p.m., we have Brittanee on video leaving the Blue Water Resort. Then her phone travels at a speed consistent with walking.
At what point did you get a sense she went from walking to being in a car?
So her last outgoing text message or communication of any kind to anyone was at 8:57:58. And we knew from the geolocation data that she was moving north on Ocean Boulevard. And we knew that if she continues her normal pattern of walking, that we would have seen her back on this camera. But Brittanee never was seen crossing back. Instead, what you see is that only approximately 6 or 7 minutes later, that her phone is pinging in the area blocks and blocks and blocks north, where it would be impossible for someone on foot to get there that fast.
And how do you know which way she's going?
The way the phone data looked to us was that they stayed on this road here.
So that's when, for the FBI team, what had been a routine stream of traffic on the 11th Avenue South footage took on urgent meaning.
We knew that between 8:58 p.m. and 9:03 p.m., a car was going to pass on that 11th Street South camera that had Brittanee's phone in it, which most likely had Brittanee in it. These guys had the video enhanced.
We studied that video ad nauseum to really make sure we knew every vehicle that went by.
That took months and months and months and months because a bunch of vehicles, grainy video, it's hard to tell the difference between a Ford Explorer, black, brown, suburban, pickup truck.
At the same time, they're digging through files and databases, trying to determine what vehicles their persons of interest were driving or had access to.
Could we attribute a vehicle associated with any of our persons of interest to a vehicle in that video?
Eventually, there was a point in time when there was one specific vehicle that stood out to us.
It's an oddly specific Eddie Bauer Ford Explorer.
Even as the team zeroed in on Point A on the Myrtle Beach Strip, they also had to narrow down which persons of interest could be placed at the other end of the puzzle, at Point B at the Boulevard Landing.
What was obvious to us was like, you don't just pick that location. We were reasonably sure it was somebody that had familiarity with the landing.
That's when the team's meticulous approach points to a familiar name. Raymond Moody.
Raymond Moody was an individual that popped up both at A and both at B during that evening.
He was living at the Sunset Lodge.
And crucially, they discovered documentation that Angel Voss, Ray Moody's girlfriend, could have had access to the type of Ford Explorer they'd identified in that video from 11th Avenue South.
Meanwhile, one more piece of information, also involving Angel, comes to the FBI's attention. According to authorities, Angel once told a friend that she and Ray might have had something to do with Brittanee Drexel's disappearance.
Authorities say that Angel's friend goes to investigators with this information, and they convince her to let them record another conversation with Angel.
She gets a statement from Angel on tape saying, I did it, not Ray, I did it.
Authorities cannot corroborate Angel's claim, and they say that they're skeptical that it's true.
The idea is from all of the agencies, look, Angel didn't do this. She's lying, but Angel was on tape saying she did that.
And given Angel's possible access to that Ford Explorer on Ocean Boulevard, the FBI sees an opportunity.
Ray's the convicted sex offender. We think we got our guy, but if everything's pointing at Angel, that might be a tool we can use. Ultimately, it's decided that, hey, now's the time. Let's take a run at it and see what happens, you know?
I mean, I'll take you best my abilities, but am I going to be 100% precise? I can't promise you that.
And then we get to the third agent who starts asking the tough questions.
Okay, now what are you doing? No, please don't.
FBI investigators are sitting down with Ray Moody's longtime girlfriend, Angel Voss, at the Georgetown County Sheriff's Office. It's more than 10 years after local authorities first brought her to the same room to question her about Ray and the night of Brittanee Drexel's disappearance.
I took her upstairs, introduced her to Special Agent Kavanaugh and Special Agent Conley and Intelligence Analyst Caleb Messer. She agreed to go in, sit down, talk with them.
Why don't you kind of go back to the beginning on this thing and just talk to everybody who's been interviewed before?
Anything she says is better than nothing. We'll even take the small victories, because the small victories adds up.
It's a little ways to go. I understand. I mean, I'll tell you best of my abilities, but can I be 100% precise? I can't promise you that.
So the interview starts out very slowly as they're asking her basic questions in order to warm her up before they start hitting her with the harder questions.
What is the first memory that you have about the first time you heard about the Brittanee Drexel case?
First time I heard it on TV, probably heard it at work.
They're trying to determine if she or Ray would have been driving that 1998 Ford Explorer on Ocean Boulevard during the specific time window that they think Brittanee's cell phone passed the camera on 11th Avenue South.
We're pretty sure that's their Explorer, but I need her to say it.
Do you guys ever have a Bravada, an Oldsmobile or anything like that?
Like a Cherokee kind of thing?
Could be.
I was accident, but my car messed up before I got in with my brother let me use his car.
Okay.
Now he had for like Cherokee, but I don't know what.
She didn't say Explorer. It was hard.
Do you remember anything about when it was wrecked or when you borrowed his car?
Early 2009, maybe? Yeah, maybe.
Have Ray ever been in the vehicle?
Just a couple times. Really not too much. And actually, I do think I picked him up.
She was trying to minimize as much detail as she possibly could. Try and keep things as gray as she possibly can.
Was there any reason why anyone might have seen that vehicle near the landing the night that Brittany went missing?
I have no idea. I was at work.
Or work that night?
It's work.
This is an art form. There are 3 agents that are questioning her, and the first 2 handle all of the initial stuff, and then we get to the 3rd agent who starts asking the tough questions.
Angel, I'm kind of a direct guy.
That's fine.
I'm not going to beat around the bush. I don't want to waste your time. Do you have any involvement in picking up Brittanee Drexel?
Hell no. Honestly, did not.
She was never in a vehicle with you?
No, never a vehicle with me. No, period.
Mike Conley, he brought out the big guns at this point in time. He let her know that the FBI was in possession of an intercepted communication in which an individual claims responsibility for the death of Brittanee Drexel.
So I'm going to read you a couple of quotes. Right, it's pretty much almost verbatim what was said by one of these people.
Okay, okay, what? Don't believe me. Because if you're trying to accuse him of anything, then I'm going to believe about it.
Angel said, you're not going to sit here and tell me that Ray was involved in this girl's death. He didn't have anything to do with it.
Because I say he didn't, okay? I say he didn't know I was using it. I'm not, yeah, you are. I don't think he did. And you're not going to involve in it.
Hey, do with it. It's done. Hey,
No, I'm not.
Let's give us
I said no.
one piece of
I said no, no, please, no, I know.
She storms out of there. Obviously, it's a law enforcement facility. You're not allowed to walk around unattended. So I had to run and go get her and accompany her back out to the parking lot. She's cussing them the whole way out. And I told her, I said, look, they're not here to talk about Ray. They're here to talk about you. Right now, you're the focus of the Drexel investigation. She started chain smoking a couple cigarettes, and she says, no, I need to go back in there and talk to them.
I'm back.
Hank had explained to her that she's the one they had on tape talking about Brittany. It was her own words the agent was going to read.
She tells the FBI she knows what she said. She was just drunk.
But I don't like drinking, and she kept asking me questions about Ray.
Saying that to absorb and deflect, get the attention off of Ray.
I just want everybody to leave me alone. I wouldn't play home and you said anything.
That's true.
No, I would never hurt anybody. I don't know the truth. I don't know where he was that night.
She maintained that she wasn't with him, didn't know where he was, what he was doing.
He did have a vehicle that night. That night, yes.
She placed Ray in her brother's vehicle.
So the vehicle was on the boulevard at the exact time, pretty much your recollection is that was in Ray. Your vehicle, that was your vehicle.
It was my vehicle.
That puts Ray in the same place at the same time from the approximately the same location that Brittany disappeared from. That was huge. Law enforcement had never gotten there before.
At the end of the day, we're looking for Brittany, the body, right? So that is the goal. That is a golden ticket.
I'm sure it is.
Right? What we're trying to do is find out what exactly happened, right? That we picked you to talk to because we thought you would have information. Right? There is evidence that indicates that you could have been in that vehicle. Right? Right? That your phone could have been there.
You know
photographic, call detail records, text message content, geolocation data that could prove or disprove her statements. That's a big win.
Just before the interview concludes, Angel tells the FBI she does not know what happened to Brittanee Drexel.
Anybody who has that information would be holding a very, very valuable part. I don't know where Brittanee is. I don't. I don't. We want to work with it, but we want to try to get there.
When we ended the interview, Angel appeared cooperative.
I'll make it tomorrow.
We thought it went well. Her hopes were dashed pretty quickly of that the next day when she didn't respond to any of my calls or texts. We let a full day go by. We're back to square one. We all come together. I want that phone. I'm getting a search warrant to get in your house and get that phone. We execute the search warrant. Huge operation. You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a cop out there that day. Everybody wanted to be part of this.
Senior investigator Hank Carrison is leading one team, one route, while Special Agent Michael Conley and Special Agent James Cavanaugh are leading the second team, a different route.
They actually encounter Ray and Angel in a church parking lot next to a Dollar General. Ray comes right up and starts talking to Special Agent Conley. Mike told him that we got some stuff we think it's important that you hear.
And Ray says, I got a big surprise for you guys.
We got a call that he wanted to speak to us.
While investigators are executing a search warrant at the house where Ray Moody lives with his longtime girlfriend Angel Voss, Moody arrives back on the scene.
I give Ray a copy of the search warrant. He can put two and two together and start to realize that we've got evidence, and ultimately we would go after whatever and whomever we had to get justice for Brittanee Drexel.
Moody asks his attorney to meet with the FBI.
We presented the information about the vehicles, the information about the phones.
And we said, this is what we think happened.
The investigators painted Moody into a corner.
We got a call and that he wanted to speak to us.
Moody meets with the FBI and local authorities at his attorney's office.
You do have the right to remain silent. Okay? Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
The only person who ever told this story to you is Mama Weir. Angel never even knew the real story.
After 13 long, agonizing years, it's over in an instant. Ray Moody confesses to killing Brittanee Drexel.
Well, I was going down Ocean Boulevard, and they were going along very slow driving, and I saw the Drexel worker walking along the sidewalk.
Did she ask for a ride, or did you ask her if you wanted a ride? Do you remember?
I asked her if she'd like to park with us.
Okay.
She's sure.
Angel was with you when you picked up Brittanee, is that correct? She got you to get in the car?
She was sitting in the passenger seat, so we started driving, just driving around, smoking and talking. Went right into Georgetown. Went right to a spot where we used to camp out down by the river. And I was by myself with her. Because Angel left for a while, seriously. As things got out of hand, I panicked, she panicked, and I strangled her.
Moody's statements are that the murder and the strangulation and the rape all occurred at the landing. But at that point, it's just a confession. But it doesn't get you to a point where you can say definitively it's all correct, and he's the guy.
But Moody claims full responsibility for the crime.
I did this. Yeah. Angel had been a victim of mine for a long time.
The ultimate test for us was going to be, could he provide information that would ultimately lead to the remains of Brittanee Drexel?
Raymond Moody takes them up past the Sunset Lodge, about 3 miles into a wooded area, to the site where he says that he buried her body.
He stood on the ground and said, it's right here.
Investigators immediately arrest Raymond Moody for obstruction of justice so they can hold him in jail until they can excavate the site.
And then there's the matter of a difficult phone call to Dawn Drexel.
And I go, you've got to be kidding me. And I said, they looked at him in 2012. And I'm like, oh my God.
Dawn had called me and she just said, you're never going to believe who it is. And I said, who? And she said, Raymond Moody.
Brittanee was killed at that boat landing. You know, he took her down there. Same night she went missing, he raped her. She fought. She fought hard.
Ernie Merchant can only think back in horror to the time that Raymond Moody described the scratches on his face as being the result of a wild weekend.
If those claw marks on his face were made by her daughter, she fought for her life.
We lodged Ray overnight in jail. We brought him out the next day, and with his attorneys present, we conducted a far more in-depth and more formal interview.
So I lived straight back in Georgetown, and the whole time we're having jokes and talking all that kind of stuff.
Moody tells investigators that sometime after they got to the pool yard landing, Angel left for a period of time, and that's when Moody, now alone, says he murdered Brittanee.
Did you have any inclination at that point when Angel left and what was going to happen next? There's something just like snapping. Just like all of a sudden.
Moody says he hid Brittanee's body about 150 feet away in a blanket in a grove of trees.
Yeah, put her underneath the tree.
Moody says when Angel returned, he told her Brittanee's friends had come and picked her up.
She had any questions about it.
He says he retrieved Brittanee's body hours later while Angel was sleeping and buried it at the site he'd taken investigators to. Several days after Moody's confession, Angel herself came in for what's called a proffer interview. In effect, she promises to tell the truth, and in return, they promise to take her cooperation into account in determining whether or not to prosecute her for any involvement she might have had in the events of that night. Despite having lied, Angel finally admits she was with Ray when they picked up Brittanee Drexel on the strip. But she says she left Moody and Brittanee alone at the pool yard landing.
According to prosecutors, phone records show that there was a time later in the evening at the pool yard landing where she and Ray were not together.
She got into the vehicle. She had her phone and everything with her. Never made me suspicious for a little bit until things came on TV. Then I'm like, okay, what's going on? He said, I told you, was she there? And my answer I got every time I said anything about it. He never said one word about the night or anything that happened to me.
Meanwhile, investigators finally start to dig where Moody said he buried Brittanee.
All day we dug into the night. We're all feeling pretty dejected that we didn't find anything.
Those days of digging, and maybe did we miss something?
I was starting to lose hope. It's been 13 years since Brittanee Drexel suddenly went missing. Authorities now have a confession from registered sex offender Raymond Moody that they will only believe it when they've located Brittanee's body.
I talked to them on Monday, and they had started digging up this area where they believe Brittanee was put. And in the first few days, they didn't find her. Well, Wednesday I got into my car and I turned my radio on, and this song came on, Rescued by Lauren Daigle. Never been a moment you were forgotten. It's a beautiful song, and I knew they were searching for Brittanee, and I told them, listen to this song while you're searching for her.
She called me and said it gave her hope. We were getting close because of the context of that song. I played it and listened to it while we were there.
started digging, the man running the backhoe at the dig site alerted the team that he thought they were close.
All of a sudden, he says, "This is it."
He could tell dirt that had been disturbed before versus dirt that had not. We uncovered a bone, and at that point, we stopped everything, and we took a step back, and we called the evidence response team, who came out and began the process of extracting her remains.
They set up lights, and the FBI dug all night.
We go from inch by inch to grain by grain.
It was an entire team effort that night. Everyone felt a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility.
Just the wave of emotions that overcomes you. We just found Brittanee Drexel.
That following day, they had told me that they had found human remains that they believed to be Brittanee's.
The discovery of human remains in a rural area of South Carolina.
Drexel's body was identified through dental records and DNA testing.
My mom had called me. They found Brittanee's remains and her nose ring was still there. A piece of her content was still there. I told her I wanted to keep those.
And Dawn called me and told me, and immediately, like, it didn't feel like it had been 13 years. It felt like it still feels so raw.
Something that I'd waited 13 years to hear. 13 years to be able to lay my best friend to rest.
I didn't want Brittanee buried. I told her she's been in the ground too long. I said I would like to have her cremated so that the people that loved her could have a piece of her. I like this.
My mom was destined to find my sister from day one, but we're just waiting for justice for her now.
After 13 years of waiting, Brittanee Drexel's family finally getting some answers.
Authorities announcing an arrest after more than a decade of searching.
The Georgetown County Sheriff's Office charges against Mr. Raymond Moody are murder, kidnapping, criminal sexual conduct in the first degree.
Angel Voss is not charged in connection with Brittanee's disappearance.
Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. The search for Brittanee is now a pursuit of Brittanee's justice.
That pursuit of justice will soon bring Brittanee's family face to face with the man who confessed to her murder.
You guys are all mentally prepared to see this guy? Just remember that today's about Brittanee, not him.
Once he walked into that courtroom, it just made me so angry.
I was imagining 1,000 ways to break his neck.
Today is the most anticipated day in this 13-year saga. Raymond Moody is expected to plead guilty to all counts surrounding the murder of Brittanee Drexel.
Good morning.
The family of Brittanee Drexel coming face to face with the man responsible for her murder.
You got my speeches all done? Or printed out?
She read it last night, and our agenda was take out the Mr. Moody, because it just seems too respectful.
I refer to defendants all the time by
Mr.
It's almost like a backwards slap. The most important thing is that obviously this is coming from the heart.
I think the FBI just got here. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? I'm ready. If the FBI agents that I have been working with since after 2016, if they would have never gotten involved, we would not be where we are today.
prepared to see this guy? Just so you know, I mean, you're going to be looking him in the face here. You know? And all I can tell you is this, I've done this too many times. Keep your cool. Today's about Brittanee, not him.
Now, 5 months after Moody confessed to killing Brittanee Drexel, it's finally Judgment Day.
On the day of Moody's hearing, we're all there, and it's a team win for everybody. We do the best we can in what a quote-unquote civilized society allows us to do. We hope that's enough for the family.
Hi there, how are you?
Good to see you. How's everything? You're good, all things considered. Hey, good. How are you?
We had an obligation to Brittanee, and we had an obligation to Dawn and her entire family.
It feels good to see the hours that are poured in come to a somewhat of a resolution point for the family.
Amen. Thanks, Gil.
Justice for Brittanee is us all being able to look him in the face in the courtrooms and telling him that he's taken one of the most special people to all of us, and in such a monstrous way.
Once he walked into that courtroom, I was so angry.
When I saw him sitting there, I had a lot of rage, just trying to keep calm, not be one of those people to lunge. I was imagining 1,000 ways to break his neck.
The matter before you here today is the state of South Carolina versus Raymond Douglas Moody.
The state dropped the obstruction of justice charge, and the hearing was focused on Moody's plea on the charges of kidnapping, murder, and criminal sexual conduct in the first degree.
It's the state's understanding that Mr. Moody wishes to plead guilty.
Mr. Moody, you want to plead guilty?
Yes, sir. In your honor, Brittanee's mother would like to address the court.
Okay. Raymond Moody finally comes face to face with all the pain he has caused, and he'll have to listen to every word.
Today we know the truth, and today, Mr. Moody, you face the consequences for that. Brittanee is present. I wear her picture and her ashes around my neck. That's all I have left. That's all we have left after what you did to her.
He wouldn't even look at me. And I was shaking. I was that mad.
Today, no one wins. Forgiveness is not part of this narrative today. I ask you, Judge Cothran, to sentence Raymond Moody to the fullest extent of the law. Not a day less, to make sure his last breath is taken in the cage where he belongs, where he will never harm another beautiful girl like Brittanee again.
May it please the court, Your Honor. I believe Mr. Moody would like to briefly address the court.
Okay.
I did 20 years and 8 months, and I thought that was enough, but it wasn't. I was a monster then, and I was a monster, and I took Brittanee Drexel's life. I don't have the words to express how horrible I feel, and I've felt ever since that day very, very sorry.
I thought it's a show for him. That's it.
I don't buy it. I'm sorry. That's like asking the lion if he's sorry about attacking the gazelle. He's a predator. Remorse is not something that someone like Ray Moody feels.
And it's my job to sentence you appropriately. For the crime of criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, you're committed to the State Department of Correction for a term of 30 years. On kidnapping, you're committed to a term of 30 years. On the sentence of the court is you committed to the State Department of Correction for the term of your natural life.
He is going to serve life imprisonment without possibility of parole. He will never be out on the street again.
He did what he did, and now he's paying the price, and I'm glad he's locked up where he belongs.
And now that the Drexel family has their justice, Timothy Taylor's family is demanding the same thing.
Now remember, Taylor had been living under a shadow of suspicion for nearly 6 years before Moody confessed to the crime.
FBI got wind from a jailhouse informant that Taylor was allegedly involved in Brittanee Drexel's disappearance.
Timothy's name and face will forever be linked to Brittanee Drexel because of a lie. We are still waiting on authorities at all levels to clear the record. Saying the words, Timothy Taylor is innocent, does. My son deserves that.
I feel bad for Deshaun. I feel bad for the family.
So sorry for everything Deshaun endured. Nobody wins, as Dawn says, but we're so glad that justice was served today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have been fortunate to get many answers. Some of the answers have raised more questions.
I don't believe anything he has to say.
You definitely want your set for 6. Be careful. The day after Moody's sentencing, the FBI brings the family to the Pole Yard Landing, where Moody killed Brittanee.
Time was right there.
Yeah, time was right there, he said. Right in here. This is generally the area that Moody pointed out. And this is where he said he had actually raped and killed Brittanee. Right here.
Despite finally finding Brittanee after all these years and Ray Moody behind bars, her family still wrestles with some questions.
Whatever motivated Brittanee to get into that car, she was immediately separated from her phone.
In reference to Moody, I don't believe anything he has to say.
We have been fortunate to get many answers to the questions that have been asked. But some of the answers have raised more questions.
We have to live with this for the rest of our lives. We have to learn how to live with it.
I wanted to do something beautiful for her because she was a beautiful person inside and out.
Brittanee would want to be remembered as a person she was before she went missing. She'd want to be remembered as that happy-go-lucky girl who brightened up her room when she walked in.
I never thought this day would come, but here we are, 13 long years later.
When the FBI called me, I was in tears. I said, thank you so much for finding my daughter.
I would like to honor the FBI agents with this pendant. It is a picture of Brittanee, and on the back, it says, thank you for finding me.
There is nobody more singularly responsible for the resolution of this case than Dawn Drexel.
She went from being desperate to determined.
She's my kid. I mean, she was my heart. We brought her home, so now she can rest in peace.
Brittanee Drexel's mother, Dawn, has now filed a civil suit against her daughter's killer, Raymond Moody.
She says it's become her life's mission to help people on missing persons cases and to combat human trafficking. That's our report for tonight. Thanks so much for watching.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 13 years. But today we stand before you 16 years. And so in the next few witnesses, we're going to fill in those gaps of what has happened over the course of the last few years and tell you a little bit more about what Dawn has gone through. And I hope you can appreciate that. If we brought you that via live testimony, we would have been here a very long time. So I hope that you find that sufficient. Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. Moody, before the plaintiff calls his first witness, you have the opportunity to give an opening statement on your own. You may give that opening statement from your chair if you'd like, or you may waive opening statements.
At this point, I'd like to wait for giving a statement. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is 3:40 right now. We're going to take a brief recess. Been at it now for I think about almost 2 hours, so I think an hour and 40 minutes. So now seems like a good time to take a quick break before we hear from witness testimony. Again, I just want to remind you to not discuss anything that you just heard from the opening statements or the video that was played as a demonstration by the plaintiff. There'll be a time to discuss that when you deliberate. Thank you. All right, we'll be at ease for about 10 minutes, and then, counsel, will you be prepared to call your first witness at that point?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We're at ease.
Get out of here. Try to see if I can kidnap her. They were the training on the, they just started rolling on the Let me at least get them back videos. Let me see if I can even find it fast enough. No.
tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So we don't have to rush through this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay.
I will still move as quickly as I can, but it's good to know.
Are we prepared to proceed?
We are.
Let's go ahead and. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Counsel, you can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Mike Conley.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated and state and spell your name for the record.
Michael Conley, Connelley.
And Mr. Conley, is it all right if I call you Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you tell the jury a little bit about yourself as far as your background in law enforcement?
Yeah, I'm an FBI agent. I've been one for about approximately 25 and a half years, assigned in Detroit, Myrtle Beach, and an assignment overseas. I primarily work violent crime, gangs, and a little bit of terrorism.
When did you get involved in this case?
Yeah, late in 2016, late summer, early fall 2016 is when I first got involved in this case.
And how did you get involved?
Ms. Drexel, Ms. Conley, actually now, came to our office. I was supervisor of the Myrtle Beach office, and she asked if we would provide some assistance in this investigation and work with the local police a little bit more than we had been in the past, and we did.
And at that point, you and your team became involved in the investigation that at that point had not been solved, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You obviously had the opportunity to watch what happened with respect to your investigation in the 2020 episode that we all watched as part of the opening. And does that fairly and accurately represent basically what you and your team did from 2016 on?
Fairly accurate. Things have changed since then. The investigation's developed, but it's fairly accurate.
Okay. And that being said, there's a few gaps in there, right?
Yep.
And there's been obviously 3 years since that 13-year mark, which ended that video to get us to where we are, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Will you fill in a few of those gaps for the jury?
So we spoke with Mr. Moody in April 4th and actually May 4th and May 5th of 2022. And then we spoke with Angel Voss in May 11th of 2022. And we basically took those statements, and what our responsibility was to try to corroborate that. Not accept them as true, but try to corroborate those with empirical evidence, whether that be testimony, other testimony, phone records, video. And that process took over 2 years in order to successfully get to the point where we felt like we understood what parts of that story was true and which parts of that story were false. And in 2024, when we felt like we had a large part of the truth, Ms. Voss was indicted
for her role in the abduction, rape, and murder of Brittanee Drexel.
And was in the 2020 episode, Mr. Moody indicated that Brittanee Drexel willingly got in the vehicle in order to party with them. Did your investigation prove that that was true or false?
It proved that she willingly did get into the vehicle, but that it was under a ruse. That she was offered a ride to her hotel, and that's the reason she got in the car, ostensibly. That's what she believed the reason was for getting in the car. But that was not the reason that they lured her into the car.
Okay. And at that point that she was picked up, about how far was the distance between there and her hotel where she was going to pack and sleep for the night?
So the Blue Water is approximately 1.5 miles from the Bar Harbor. She, depending on the phone, which part of the phone records that you can actually be fairly certain about, she didn't make it very far past outside of the Blue Water before she was abducted. And when I say not very far, we're talking like less than 0.2 of a mile before she was inside the vehicle and moving at vehicle speed.
And with respect to Mr. Moody on the episode, it indicated that Ms. Voss was in the passenger seat. Is that accurate?
That's not accurate based upon the information we have now. She's actually in the back of the vehicle. And Ms. Voss was, at one point in time she was in the passenger seat, and then they switched drivers.
And so is it your understanding that Ms. Voss was the one that offered Brittanee a ride in the vehicle?
That's correct. And that's primarily based upon what was referred to in that video is a 2014 hotel recording where Ms. Voss makes admissions that she was the person that Brittanee got in the vehicle with. And that proved to be true with our later investigation too as well.
And so throughout the course of this investigation, what was your interaction like with Dawn as these new facts to light and new information came to light? What were your interactions like with her?
I mean, I was constantly in contact with Dawn, but I think the frustration that Dawn had was that I couldn't tell her really what was happening in the case. Oftentimes I refer to it as a person A or person B. We're trying to work different angles and stuff like that, but generally you like to keep in contact with the victim family just to reassure them that the investigation is being worked very seriously without divulging any information about the investigation. So very regular contact, non-substantive as far as evidence until we solve the case.
And how many, just a round number, investigations have you been part of in your career? Hundreds, dozens?
These types of cases or any case?
Any type of case.
Hundreds.
Okay. And as far as the victims that you have interacted with, on a scale of no involvement to maximum involvement, where would you put Dawn on that scale?
Yeah, over a course of, I've known Dawn for approximately 9 years now, very high on that scale. Her contact for 9 years is constant, like weekly at times, daily at times, through all the highs and lows of the investigation. Yeah.
And safe to say that without Dawn walking into the FBI office herself in 2016 and meeting with you, this case probably never gets solved.
It's hard to say. I mean, I can't say anything other than comment on what her impact was on us, and she held us constantly accountable just by calling and asking, not demanding, but just calling and asking, and we just tried to reassure that we were working hard to find out the truth.
Where were you when you got word that they had found Brittanee?
So I was with Mr. Moody when he pointed out where she was at. And then once they started to dig, I had to fly back overseas. So I was actually overseas when they actually found her.
What went through your mind at that point?
Just, the goal of the case all along was like kind of to get justice for Brittanee and also to provide whatever little bit of closure we could for the family by bringing Brittanee back home. So it was a relief, I guess would be the best way to say it, is that the whole team working hard was able to provide that for Dawn and her family.
All right. And with respect to after, obviously, Mr. Moody was sentenced. He's been 3 years in that time. Tell the jury a little bit about what you've observed as far as what Dawn has done, you know, in that period of time, and how the investigation has progressed. You indicated that, you know, since we've been involved, Angel Voss was indicted, for example. What came of that, and where are we now?
So, like I said, after you get anybody's statement, the most important thing you need to do is try to corroborate it. You don't accept anything as true unless you can corroborate it. And there's some certain parts of this story that unfortunately can probably never be corroborated with any sort of empirical evidence. But it was just a 2.5-year period where we had to go back into cell phone records. We had to go back to the video. We had to do additional interviews. We had to try to establish, A, whether the story was true, and B, whether any other individuals were involved and to what degree that they were involved. So it sounds like it's a pretty simple task, but it took all of us the full 2.5 years to be able to get to the point where we could bring the case to a grand jury, indict the case, and then ultimately in September of this year when she pled guilty to those charges too as well.
And throughout the course of that entire process, was Dawn involved?
Almost every day, definitely every week, but she was constantly calling. And again, not at Badger. She wasn't demanding anything. She just would inquire, and we would just reassure that it's very important to us to find out what the truth was, and then tell her, oh, maybe at the end of that that was the truth. I mean, I think she was prepared for whatever answer we would give, as long as she felt that we sufficiently investigated it to determine if it was truthful or not.
And at the end of that piece of the case, Ms. Voss was sentenced, right?
She was sentenced on February 13th, just last week.
Yeah. And Dawn was there for that.
She certainly was.
Is there anything with respect to Dawn's involvement in the case that you have found unusual, you know, or you know, just her? I think you spoke a little bit about it on the 2020 episode, but it's kind of, you know, just a driver of justice, for lack of a better word. And you know, I'll tell you, my interaction is the same. She texts and calls and wants to know what's going on, and it's a good thing. But
exactly, her persistence is incredible. She's driven to get justice for her daughter. But again, I think the important part of it is it's never in a demanding way. It is more just asking, and then, you know, and we all felt that the whole team felt it was incumbent upon us to do a thorough investigation to find out what the truth was. And she just never gave up. She, like I said in the video, she's singularly responsible, I believe, for ensuring that this case received the diligence that it did by the whole team.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Moody, you may question Mr. Conley if you have any questions for him.
No, sir, I don't have any questions.
May the witness please excuse your honor.
He may. Mr. Willie, you can call your next witness.
All right, we call Kim Kite.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you? Please have a seat and then state and spell your name for the record.
Kimberly. Last name is Kite, K-I-T-E.
Ms. Kite, will you tell the jury just a little bit of your background, who you are, how you spend your time, so they can understand how you fit into this picture?
I'm former law enforcement. I got out in 2009. I live in Somerville, so in this state. But I created a Facebook page about a year after getting out of law enforcement for the missing. And then there was and Dawn had created a foundation for these little angels, and so there was a controversy with a flyer out of Mexico that both pages had posted, and so a lady that was with her, you know, reached out to me, and when she found out where I lived, Dawn reached out to me at that time, and asked me if I would look from the beginning of Brittanee's case to where they were at the time, and I told her I would, and over the years, I'd say she's more like a sister at this point to me and a best friend, but she is just, through all of it, you wouldn't think someone would still be so loving, trusting, compassionate, caring, and she is. But she, as you saw on the 2020 video, the roller coaster over the years, and it's hard to even put into words her emotions with every single roller coaster. She heard horrific stories that weren't truths, and images, once you hear, those images are burned in a mother's mind. She's been amazing. Sometimes I've wondered how she's kept going. She maintained her family, but she had to spend a lot of time away from her other children to spend so much time in Myrtle Beach to find Brittanee. And she was hopeless at times. I can remember a long period of time where it was like she gave up, not fighting and not pushing, but gave up the hope of ever finding Brittanee or ever having answers. And somehow she pushed through that. Over the years, I've watched her develop a social anxiety as far as going out in public with very crowded places. She doesn't do well with that. It has affected her work ability. And she fought hard a long time over the years, hold on and balance everything. I think everything just finally caught up to her.
Kim, when you and Dawn got working together on this case, I mean, you really dove into it. Is that fair to say?
I did.
In fact,
but I did.
Right. In fact, when I got involved in the case, you were one of the first people I met with. Do you remember that? Yes.
Yes.
And one of the things that came out of that was Dawn's ongoing commitment to not only finding Brittanee, but to other families that have gone through this, and you've seen some of that.
She's talked a lot over the years of wanting to help other families, and she did create Brittanee's Little Angels. It's hard. It got to a place for her. It was hard to continue that at the time for her because her daughter was her focus, and that's how it should have been. She never gave up that right time's going to come, that she's going to be able to help other families. And she's been with me now for 10 days because she lives in Florida. So her time came up this weekend. We had a little 12-year-old in Beaufort missing, and she was able to go with me. And it was to have a mom that has experienced what that mom is experiencing at the time. You can't really put words to that. And that mother was so grateful for her, but it also made Dawn feel good. It fulfilled her purpose too, I think.
And through all of that, you've seen Dawn push this case in every dimension.
Oh, absolutely. I've been involved with numerous families over the last 14 years, and families fight hard. I'm not minimizing anybody, but I've never seen anybody fight as hard as she has without ever giving up. No matter where she was mentally, she lost her dad, she lost both of her brothers, all of this while Brittanee was still missing and it was the unknown. And she just, I don't know, she's amazing.
Thank you, Kim. I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Moody, any questions of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Stipman, step down.
on Miss Conley.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated and then state and spell your full name.
My name is Dawn Conley, Conley.
Dawn, tell the jury where you live now.
I actually live in Florida now.
And why did you move to Florida?
Florida is very peaceful for me. There was a lot going on in New York because Brittanee had took national status, and my kids were starting to feel uncomfortable and things like that. And I had lost one of my brothers too, and my parents ended up moving to Florida. So I wanted a new start. I wanted to go somewhere where nobody knew me.
And throughout the course of Brittanee's life, though, you lived in New York, correct?
Yes, I lived in Rochester, New York.
Tell the jury a little bit about Brittanee as a kid, growing up.
Brittanee, as you could see in the video, she was just full of life. She was a happy little girl. Brittanee was born blind in her one eye. She couldn't see. So she had a disability, and she had gone through multiple surgeries on her eye. But she started playing soccer when she was 5, and she was, I think, the quickest person on her team. She was a great soccer player. She was our soccer star. She was playing travel ball. I mean, she loved hanging out with family and my parents, her grandparents, going shopping and doing things like normal teenagers do.
And Brittanee was the eldest of your children, correct?
Brittanee was. Brittanee was my eldest daughter. She was my firstborn. And then 6 years, all my kids are 6 years apart. So 6 years, Brittanee was 6 years old when she became a big sister to Marissa. And then 6 years after Marissa was born, I had Camden.
And describe, the interaction that you had as a family with Brittanee and what she meant to you and your family. That's part of what the jury has to consider.
We were a very close-knit family. Brittanee always thought family was very, very important. She always took care of our brothers and sisters, and even her friends. She had a ton of friends. She was very close with my parents, and they did a lot with her. We'd all go to her soccer games. The kids always wanted to be with Mom, and I took them everywhere with me. We had a great relationship. I have a great relationship with all my kids. But when Brittanee went missing, her case consumed me. And I feel bad because my other kids, it hurt them. And, I can't go back and change what happened, but I can make it better from here on out. I mean, my children really suffered through all of this. They thought they lost their mom, they lost their sister. So it was very difficult for them.
And at the time that Brittanee was, what we now know to be kidnapped, Marissa was 11.
Marissa was 11 and Camden was 5.
What do you remember about explaining to them what had happened in Myrtle Beach?
Are you talking about after we knew it happened?
No, once you got back from the first trip down and you didn't bring Brittanee back.
When I first came here, I was in Myrtle Beach for 2 months looking for Brittanee. We were passing out flyers. We would talk to anybody that would talk to us. I went to multiple searches around the Myrtle Beach area and in Georgetown. And I had went home, I think, once in between that time to see my other 2 children. And then I came back, and I was here for a total of 2 months. And when I got home, I didn't have Brittanee. We just knew that she was still missing at that point.
And at that point in time, when you went back home, did you stay in Rochester? Did you stay in Rochester, or did you eventually come back to Myrtle Beach?
I did. I went home for probably about, maybe 3 days, 4 days, and then I came right back to Myrtle Beach.
And about, how long did that, process go on, where you'd be home a few days and then back to Myrtle Beach, and home a few days and back to Myrtle Beach?
I would go to Myrtle Beach for a lot of her searches. There was multiple searches done for her in the Georgetown area. So anytime that, they would have a search or I needed to have a meeting with law enforcement, I would travel down to South Carolina. And then in, I think it was 2011 or 12, it was 2011, I think. I had moved to South Carolina, to Myrtle Beach, to be closer to Brittanee. And I felt like if I was here, that I would be able to push her case along.
And when you came down to South Carolina to live, to do that, is that what you did? Did you work with law enforcement to push your case along?
I did. I was working with law enforcement. There wasn't a whole lot going on at that time.
Okay. And during that period of time, were you also doing things on your own, as far as flyering and billboards and things like that?
Yes, I was working. I was working with other individuals, getting billboards put up for Brittanee. And anytime I had a chance to get Brittanee's face on the media, I did, because we didn't know what happened. And any time that I could, at least if I kept her face and name out there, maybe somebody would see her.
And when did you move from Myrtle Beach?
I moved from Myrtle Beach in 2013. I went back to Rochester, New York, and I was with my children. And Marissa was in her 20s when I had ended up leaving there in Camden. Had graduated high school when I ended up moving to Florida. But I stayed there for quite some time.
And during that period of time, what were your interactions just in the public like? Were you able to go on as kind of a normal person back in Rochester?
No, not really. Like I said, her case consumed me. I would do anything possible that I could do for her, whether it be talking to, law enforcement, talking to other people to help me, because it takes an army to find a missing person. And I would reach out to a lot of people, a lot of different organizations and things like that, just to try to have them help me find Brittanee.
Where were you the first time that you got the call and they told you they thought the case was solved, or they thought they had a good lead on solving the case?
Are you speaking about 2016?
Right.
I was in Rochester. I was called
I think, by the FBI, and they wanted me to come down for a press conference that they were having. They had some information that they believed, was truthful. And I got sat down in a room, in a conference room, and they told me that my daughter was kidnapped, raped, shot, and thrown in an alligator pit. And I couldn't really talk at that point. I just broke down. I didn't want to imagine that happening to her. So that was very hard for me. And during all this time, it was just, we had so much hope that Brittanee was still out there. And then I got told that in 2016, which did, stuff. So, and it's very hard for me to focus. I have been out of work, I think, quite a few times since Brittanee's been missing. And this past recent time in March of 2024, I believe, and also in 2022, I was out of work also, but I had a lot of things going on. My younger brother passed away in 2022. Then they found Brittanee's remains, and then my father passed in September, right before my 50th birthday.
And the PTSD and the anxiety and the agoraphobia, they have tied that back to what you've been going through with the loss of your daughter.
That is correct.
With respect to Mr. Moody, and when you learned that he did what he did to your daughter, where were you?
I was at home on my back porch.
And how do you remember that conversation going?
When the FBI had called me, when they had told me who it was, I said, "Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me." And I said they were looking at him in 2011, 2012. And I just broke down in tears.
Did you believe it?
I did.
And at that point in time and since, tell the jury a little bit about what has happened. I mean, you've been to South Carolina, I don't know how many times at this point.
I've been in South Carolina from 2009 all the way up to now it is 2025. I've gone back and forth, trying to do anything possible that I could do for Brittanee.
And why, tell the jury why the civil case is important to you. That this part of justice is important for you and for your daughter.
I wanted to set a precedence that people that commit these crimes and do what Mr. Moody did to my daughter, they need everything taken away from them because they took the most precious thing that they could have taken away from me, and that was Brittanee.
And that's what you're here fighting for?
That is correct. It's about the principle.
Thank you, Ms. Conley.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Moody, any questions for Ms. Conley?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Conley, you can step back. Counsel, you can call your next witness.
Plaintiff rest, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few matters to take up. At this time, I'm going to ask that you return retire to your jury room. The matters that we have to take up are matters to be taken up outside of your presence. They're legal matters. But if you'll return to your jury room, we'll be with you here shortly. Okay, Mr. Moody, the plaintiff has rested in this case, meaning they have put forward all the evidence they intend to. Mr. Moody, that then goes to you. Do you have any evidence that you intend to put forward for this jury?
No, Your Honor, no.
Okay. What I would like to do, it's 4:32. Do you have any proposed charges that y'all have provided or anything like that? Okay.
No.
I have, with this, there is I have a charge for intentional infliction of emotional distress, but it's been admitted. So my assumption is that the charge would be on damages. You requested a bifurcation. I can limit that damages charge to not include punitive damage, but only be compensatory and actual damages. Is that correct?
That's correct, and then just Your Honor's standard charge of what outrage or intentional infliction is, and that it's been admitted.
Right.
I think is, and our burden of proof, and the basics.
Sure. And one thing that is a little different with this, it's my understanding when cases are not contested and liability has been established or admitted, that you will have a chance to charge, but there will not be a reply since it is admitted. So what we will do, Mr. Moody, is we'll bring the jury back out. I'll allow you to state on the record that you don't intend to put up a defense or any testimony. I'm going to send the jury home tonight, and in the morning we will do closing arguments, and I will charge the law of this case, and the jury will begin deliberations at that time. Is there anything else from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else from you, Mr. Moody?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We can then bring the jury back. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard, the plaintiff is rested in this case. Mr. Moody, do you intend to put up any evidence for defense?
No, Your Honor, I don't. I'm completely guilty as charged. I have no defense for my behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Ladies and gentlemen, given the time, it's 4:35. We still have closing arguments and also being charged on the law. That being said, I don't want to keep you late tonight. I have a feeling that if we were to close and charge you on the law, that your deliberation may continue into the late hours. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to excuse you. It's 4:35, and I'm going to have you come back in tomorrow morning at 9:30. Tomorrow morning we'll hear closing arguments. I'll charge you in the law, and at that point you'll be able to begin deliberating amongst yourselves on this case. But again, I ask you, as I previously stated, please do not do any research. The evidence that you have heard has come from the witness stand. That is the evidence that you're to consider. But ladies and gentlemen, have a good night, and we'll see you at 9:30 in the morning. Anything else before we break tonight? Anything, Mr. Moody?
No, Your Honor.
All right. What I would like, is there any audio, video things that you need in the morning for closings?
Not other than what I've got here, I'll set up again.
Just wanted to
And
make
Miss
sure that
Cindy
you,
is-
just make sure you're here in time to get that all set up.
Yeah, we will.
Perfect. All right, we're at ease then until tomorrow morning at 9:30. Council, what I would like to do actually, we'll try to start at 9:15.
Okay.
That way we can have a charge conference. I can discuss the law that I intend to charge.